Hi, I'm Esther McMorris and I'm delighted to introduce a brand new video series we have in store for you at 9 Feet Tall. We have a number of business leaders from companies such as Sainsbury's, TLT, DAC Beechcroft and Sea Salt and many more who'll be sharing their insight and wisdom all around the topic of programme setup and transformation. It will be a series of 9-minute episodes and the first one is all about leading with purpose. So sit back, grab yourself a cup of coffee and enjoy. What are your key drivers for change in your organisation?
Well, the key drivers for change in our organisation are very much aligned to our strategy, making sure that we're focusing on the projects that are going to get us nearer to our strategic goals.
There's a lot of drivers for change and everybody wants a piece of the action. There are, of course, a number of, let's say, top-down initiatives that are driven by ultimately kind of investor returns, whether that be EBITDA, sales margin, cost out initiatives.
I think regulatory, obviously we're a law firm, we work in the legal sector, it's a highly regulated sector. So there's often, changes to, legal precedents and things there. We're an owner-led business, so there's a lot of work on profitability, efficiency, making sure, people, have the ability to do their work as efficiently as possible. The usual sort of IT related change with regards to systems that, probably one of my least favourite. This system is going to end of life, it needs to be upgraded and it's probably going to cost quite a lot of money to do so.
For us, it's about integrating as a group. So we're a business that's kind of come together through a large number of acquisitions over a period of time. So that sense of operating model is driving a lot of those change initiatives. Equally, there's efficiency gains. So how do we eliminate waste from within that business? Because as you can imagine, when you're acquiring at pace, there's just a lot of things that come along for the ride and you've got to find a way of teasing those out.
How do you understand, organise and then prioritise various change initiatives?
Prioritisation of change initiatives, in my experience, is always a challenge in many organisations because there's usually too many things people want to do, not enough money to go around. And, it's a close collaboration between IT, who often get the responsibility of preparing that change agenda, and obviously working with senior business stakeholders to work through that prioritisation.
There's loads of competing priorities, and there's priorities both from a client point of view, externally, and from a client point of view internally as well, because where I sit, I have two types of clients. But fundamentally, we can apply the same prioritisation. So we use a 2x2. Is it a major project? Is it a quick win? Is it a nice to have, but not really necessary, so a bit of a filler? Or is it a do not do at all? And that's based on impact, energy, sort of effort, that kind of thing.
So if you're putting in a lot of changes, generally, it's so that you keep up with market competition. What are your competitors doing, especially in the world that I come from in retail?
Within our technology teams, 70% of the time is actually allocated to working on these priority initiatives.
Inevitably, it can't all be done. I can't cite specific examples, but I have seen some quite entertaining discussions. But the better the input that goes in, the smoother the decision. Ultimately, it comes down to where do things sit against the strategic plan of the organisation, and where does it sit from an affordability point of view. In my experience, there's always a cut line, and there's always a heated debate as what's above or below the line. I can remember several where it gets very heated because there's more things that people want to do than there are people available to do it or funds available to support it. The key to it is just making sure that there's a really clear value case for each initiative. The business stakeholders get to voice their request, and not only that is it's well substantiated.
From your experience, how have you aligned change at programme level to the wider business strategy?
I think aligning the programme with the broader strategy needs quite a breadth of vision, but not of scope. And by that I mean keeping a consistent message around ultimately why we're doing this, and being really consistent with that over a period of time that enables ultimately people working on a project to draw a really straight line between what they're doing and the kind of the bigger purpose.
If you don't have that alignment, you're almost sort of moving people faster to chaos in a way, because everybody's going off in different directions.
We know that if you're looking at change initiatives, you cannot have lots of major projects on at the same time. It just isn't possible. So does the change strategy align with the firm's strategy? Because if it doesn't, you've got no chance. You're not going to get the buy-in from the top level and across the piece.
So I think one of the key things here is looking at governance, but also some sort of mechanism. And it's a mechanism to collate ideas from sort of business conception right the way through to a change actually being landed. Continually sort of reviewing those and evaluating them against our business objectives is really key.
How do you distill that kind of corporate strategy down to the individual team? So how do you make sure from a leadership perspective that there's a benefit? What does it mean for that kind of that level of organisation versus what does it mean for a colleague who's going to be receiving that change? And how do you then kind of lower down, keep kind of getting to the next level of, right, what does it mean for that colleague? And how do you really show up in terms of what does that benefit look like?
The breadth of the vision is important, but the scope has to be manageable, it has to be narrow. Otherwise, the reality is you spend a lot of time with wheels spinning and stuff just kind of doesn't get done. So I think it's a case of taking time, be patient, be consistent with the messaging, create a roadmap, because not everything that you'll want to do under that scope can be delivered in an initial phase. And absolutely building phase 2, 3, 4 and 5 is an important picture that gives people faith that there's somewhere where there's a commitment to get that stuff done.
Do you have any top tips to lead change and for good change leadership?
It's just people find change difficult. So what different hooks can you use for different people? For me, it's not so much about playing politics, but it's just about explaining the context for their part of the business or for their team, for them personally.
It's so important to have a robust change management framework, whether that be a team, whether that be kind of upskilling the business to be able to deliver change. I think sometimes it's really overlooked. And I think that in a lot of cases, from my experience, I've done a lot of technical implementation. So a lot of the time, companies will see, oh, it's a tech program, we can put that in. A lot of the time, the tech teams might lead that. And there's that real kind of missing piece around what does it really mean for people in terms of kind of how they're going to use it, how we're going to adopt it.
I'm a massive fan of John Cotter and his 8 steps, because I think they're really useful. So the 2 that I pick out of that, urgency, there has to be a real reason to do this. And that's driven by client need. And that's a really good way of being able to show the partners who are the big stakeholders in our business why we need it, why this has to happen now. That's one. But the second one, and I think this is more important, it's about communication. It's about communicating the whys, the hows, the benefits, the risks, how you're going to do it. And it's also that then joins up all the players together. Because I think if you don't communicate, it is just bound to fail because people aren't taken along on the journey. You might have the best change initiative that thinks about all the things you need to do and they put them in place, all these wonderful steps all the way along, but they don't tell anyone about it until the end. It is almost inevitably bound to fail.